Good news for Governor Cuomo. Senator Schumer has solved his financial issues. They've also, by the way, solved the financial problems of San Francisco. They've also prevented state governments from lowering taxes. This is a classic example of big government Democratic overreach in the name of COVID relief, and we all know that what we should have been doing and would have been done had this been a bipartisan discussion instead of a jam the other side approach is $500 or $600 billion directly targeted at the problem. But of course, the $1.9 trillion problem, as we said repeatedly, the $1.9 trillion package, as we said repeatedly, only had about 1% or less for vaccines, 9% or less for health care. So I think this is actually one of the worst pieces of legislation I've seen pass here in the time I've been in the Senate. We believe that the American people need to learn more and more about it. And we're going to see that they do that in the coming months as we talk repeatedly about the provisions in the bill that the Democrats do not want to discuss.
The governor has been out of control, and he shut down the economy. He shut down the restaurants, the churches, you name it, religious schools. He just has gone to town shutting things down. But that's caused like a recession or a depression in our restaurant industry and our hotels. They've kept schools closed. We've got to open the schools. There's no science that says the schools should be closed. So the state legislature took back some of the governor's power. They gave it to him and they took it back. This was a good move. The science on the schools has been clear for 9 months. I told Dr. Fauci about this 9 months ago. I showed him the studies from around the world. He tended to kind of lean in our direction, but now with the new administration, he leans back and then he leans forward. He can't decide where he is on the schools, but schools need to open. There was a study that we tweeted out today from the University of Chicago, a study of thousands of school children. It found virtually 0 infections from the kids, and it found 0 infections from the teachers. It's been safe to go back to school for a long time. Interestingly, in this study, the kids were not separated by social distancing. They did wear masks, but they didn't have any special ventilation put into the schools. So some have been saying, oh, we can't go back to schools until we make the schools 4 times larger so the kids can be 6 feet away. You don't need it. It doesn't work. It's not scientific. Kids need to go back to school. They don't get sick from this disease, and we're conquering the disease through vaccine and through natural immunity now. So I think we just need to get moved on with this. But we have a lot of petty tyrants in government, including our governor, who have decided they think they know what's best for all of us. And really, these decisions in a free society are made by each individual. In a free society, you get to decide what your risks are, and you get to make your decisions accordingly, because they're different, frankly. Under 25, the death rate from this disease was less than 1 in a million, less than the seasonal flu. Over 80, maybe 15 times worse than the seasonal flu. The death rate was significant over 80, particularly in nursing homes. And that's why it's been such a scandal with Governor Cuomo in New York, who basically took all the patients who had, all the elderly patients that were diagnosed with COVID, and he put them back in the nursing homes, seeding the nursing homes. Then he lied about it. So it was important what happened during the beginning of COVID, but right now we're getting over it. We need to get back to normal, and we need to let free individuals in a free society make some of these decisions. With regard to this latest COVID bill, there were a couple things that really upset me in there. We had a vote to try to not send checks to people in jail. You know, this is free money shouldn't be sent. You rob a liquor store and you go to jail. Should you get free money? I mean, that's ridiculous. So we had a vote, and it was party line. Every Democrat voted to send money to people in jail. Every Republican said that's not something we should do with our money. You shouldn't get a present or a gift while you're in jail. We also have had some votes recently on dead people receiving checks. Now, you think we're making that up. How could that be? But in the summertime, 1.1 million dead people got stimulus checks for over $1 billion. I introduced legislation. I got it to the Senate floor. We got it passed unanimously in the Senate. But then a senator got unhappy, and he ran to the House, and he got the House to block it. So what ended up happening is they came back and they said, oh, well, we can stop paying checks to dead people, but only if we do it over a 3-year period. And I'm like, really? You want to keep sending checks to dead people over 3 years? It's going to take you 3 years to fix this? See, this is why people get frustrated with government. If government can't even stop sending checks to dead people and can't fix it in less than 3 years, maybe a lot of these people ought to be fired. Maybe we ought to change a lot of folks if they can't do it. But the bill to fix this was opposed ultimately by Democrats, and we didn't get it through. We got through one that's going to fix it in 3 years. But that to me is still disappointing. But I think what we need to do is all pull together, support each other, and open the economy. It's time to end these lockdowns. It's time to move on. It's time to try to encourage people who are vulnerable to take the vaccine, and let's move on with our lives. Let's try to get back to normal as quickly as possible. I am positive that we are going to thrive in Kentucky and that our country will thrive. We have such a great country with such a great backbone of the Constitution and those freedoms that are enshrined there that we can thrive again. I want to be part of that. I want to hear from you on how we can do a better job and what we can do to help you in Kentucky. So with that one,
I'm assuming you've met Andrew Cuomo in...
I have, a couple of times.
Any thoughts on what's going on with your colleague there in New York?
No, I just, it's interesting to watch what he did with nursing homes. I think it's a tragedy what happened there and the policies he followed. And I do think the investigation is warranted.
Governor, one more question.
Sure.
On 1217, have you heard from any businesses or the NCAA at all, or the Summit League, about pulling out any kind of tournaments or activities?
I've heard from individuals, not businesses, and not in particular from the NCAA. Austin?
Yes, ma'am. You know, you talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but obviously with this session, we just had an unprecedented number of dollars available, both from revenue and from, of course, federal stimulus. Just, you touched on some of the highlights, but if I could just get you to talk a little bit more about maybe how you thought it went overall trying to spend those dollars throughout this session, ma'am.
Well, the budget's not done, so I'll be able to talk better when it's completed. I hate to put us in a position where something changes today and then I misspoke, but you know, I was proud of the legislature that they're willing to put more money into trust funds and that they recognize the need to put money into reserves as well, not really knowing what the economy will look like in the next 2 or 3 years going forward. To have that kind of reserve in place will be helpful stabilizing our state government and the services that we provide. They also invested heavily in infrastructure. Getting high-speed broadband access to the entire state was a priority of mine. I was glad to see that funded. They're investing in some railroad, which will be very helpful for us in moving commodities across the state of South Dakota, and also the DEX building, radio towers, public safety. All of those are long-term benefits that I think are wise investments considering what was going forward. And then paying down bonds for our technical schools was something that was important as well. And we invested in our kids. Getting that Freedom Scholarship set up was a big deal, and that will be there permanently for kids that don't have the financial means to go to get a higher education, and then also investing in some special projects and programs at our 4-year universities is incredibly important as well. So glad to see some of those moving forward in the final days.
Real quick, getting back to the IM-26 again, I apologize, but there was a compromise that was proposed in the conference committee that essentially would put most of IM-26 into effect July 1st anyways. I think Speaker Gosh brought it. I had seen memos that your office was circulating that compromise. So I guess what's different about
we had helped work on that compromise, and that was something that would have put us in a better spot today if they had adopted it. It took out the homegrown provisions. It gave us a little bit, it set it up on time, like the voters had voted on the fall ballot, but it also gave the Department of Health the ability to write the rules without the stakeholder and legislative input, which would speed it up and allow us to do that quicker. That was not adopted, and so therefore we're back to IM-26 the way it was on the ballot.
Is your main concern, I guess, the homegrown provision?
It is, and then just the lack of control around our kids having access to it. That homegrown provision has been extremely problematic from the beginning, and you know, I certainly understand the desire of the public wanting to have a medical marijuana program. Just I want to do it responsibly.
Just to follow up on that, do you have any plans to appoint on your own a committee or group to look into the questions that IM-26 didn't address?
I don't. What was interesting to me was at the beginning of session, Many legislators were coming to us asking for us for a delay. They wanted to have more input. They recognized that there needed to be some challenges. So we were not the only ones who wanted to have some provisions, and there was a lot of debate throughout session on what changes would be acceptable and which ones wouldn't be. A lot of people invested a lot of time into it. We're at the end of session. There are no changes as of today. That doesn't mean that someone might not come back and have an idea to deal with later on.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentlelady from the great state of Colorado.
Gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you very much to the ranking member of the Budget Committee, my friend Congressman Jason Smith. Thank you for this time. COVID relief, Mr. Chairman, here we go again. The left continues to manipulate the English language however it suits their fancy, lying to the American people about what is really happening in the swamp. American Rescue Plan? Please. President Biden is dropping bombs before anybody is getting checks. Relief? Where is the relief for moms and dads trying to return their children to school? This legislation has more funding for Democrat pet projects than it does for getting our kids out from behind the screens and back into the classrooms. Democrats say this money that hasn't been and won't be spent anytime soon is urgently needed to safely reopen schools. Bull. Many states have had their schools open for months now. By one estimate, state departments of education have between 53 and 63 billion federal funds to reopen. That's unspent. This bill has another $130 billion, but only 5% would be spent this school year. Democrats should stop using kids' schooling as a bargaining chip for more money for teachers' unions. Stop holding our children's education hostage for your pet projects and your lobbyist friends. What about our seniors? Where is the relief for those who have suffered under draconian leadership of Cuomo, Whitmer, Newsom? This legislation uses COVID like cheap drugstore concealer, masking the nasty truth about Democrat spending. This is nothing more than a trashy spending spree while doing nothing for those who have suffered the most from this China virus. With a $1 trillion left unspent from previous COVID bills, only 9% of this bill is going to address COVID-related issues. About 45% of it won't be spent until 2022 and beyond. And it begs the question, why would Democrats push such a partisan, divisive, and frankly, unhelpful bill? The answer can be found on K Street, Mr. Speaker, where lobbyists close to Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden are already chilling the bubbly. Mr. Speaker, Americans see why this legislation will be the first COVID bill to receive zero bipartisan support. Americans know this bill will benefit states and unions that have been poorly mismanaged. But on Main Street, the small businesses will continue to suffer. $90 billion to bail out private pension plans, $500 billion to states and localities to keep their economies locked down. Less than 9% of this $1.9 trillion goes to something COVID-related. Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood gets funding, pensions get bailed out, and San Francisco's balance sheets goes from red to black. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Planned Parenthood can go fund themselves. If conservatives were in charge, you would see a limited, targeted relief plan while enabling businesses and schools to remain open and reigniting our economy. Look at businesses and schools, look at Florida and Texas who have led the way. Never forget, these jobs are essential, and the best stimulus package is to reopen. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Missouri Reserve.
For being here today. Ms. Gupta, I want to come to you first. Should a future Senate-confirmed nominee tweet critical comments about a sitting U.S. Senator?
Senator, I I've apologized and will apologize again for the harsh tone and coarse language that I have used. And if I'm confirmed as Associate Attorney General, you won't hear that kind of coarse language from me, and I will look forward.
But it is a part of your past. And on October 5th, 2018, you tweeted, Senator Collins, and I've got it right here, Senator Collins is failing her constituents and sending a dangerous message to survivors. This is excruciating. Do you regret that?
Senator, I recall
yes
that.
Yes or no is fine.
I do regret it, yes.
Okay. All right. And you were criticizing her because of her vote on Justice Kavanaugh. Is that right?
That's for her vote, yes.
Okay. Then, June 15th, 2020, 2 years later, you tweeted, and I've got that one right here. There was a reason, many reasons, so many of us fought tooth and nail to keep Kavanaugh off of the court. A2, Susan Collins. So, I see that you also have tweeted that we should believe survivors. On September 27th, 2019, you tweeted, 1 year later, I still support Dr. Blasey Ford. I thank her again for her bravery, and yes, I still believe her powerful testimony. The truth is, she was not alone last year. Millions of women, survivors, and allies had her back. We still do. Believe survivors. So now 5 women, brave women, have come forward with allegations of inappropriate conduct about New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Lindsey Boylan said Cuomo forced her to kiss him in his office against her wishes. Do you believe Lindsey Boylan?
Senator, I think it's important that the Attorney General of New York has opened an investigation to investigate those claims, and I believe that survivors too often in this country and victims of sexual assault don't have their ability to be heard, and I think that it's appropriate for the Attorney General of New York to have this investigation.
So let me ask you a broader question, since you don't want to say whether you believe a survivor of sexual harassment. Should these 5 brave women be believed?
Sorry, Senator, I'm not sure I understood the question.
It's a simple yes or no. Should these women that have stepped forward, all 5 of them, be believed?
I believe they should.
Survivors.
I believe survivors should be heard, and I believe that it is appropriate for the Attorney General of New York to be conducting an investigation.
Okay, so these survivors of sexual harassment shouldn't all be believed?
Senator, as I've said, I believe very much and have spent a lot of my career ensuring that victims and victims of sexual abuse and sexual violence are able to have their voices heard. Obviously, in a criminal justice system, everyone is afforded the presumption of innocence, and there's a process for that. But on this, where I think on Governor Cuomo's allegations, the investigation by the Attorney General is ongoing, and I believe that's appropriate.
Okay. If these stories are true, should Governor Cuomo resign?
Senator, as a nominee for the Justice Department, I don't believe it's appropriate for me to decide what the remedy should be. I believe there should be a full and thorough fact-finding, yes.
So you don't have an opinion like you had an opinion back in 2018. And I thought that you backed Me Too and believed all survivors. So you've been posting about believing women over and over since the Me Too movement started. And I thought that you supported women in the Me Too movement. So to me, it seems a little hypocritical, to say the least, that you seem to not have an opinion based on the allegations of multiple women that have come forward. Let me move on, since we don't have an opinion on Me Too. You are an outspoken advocate for soft-on-crime approaches, and I'm not sure if your lenient approach to punishment is what we want to see for the number 3 official at the Justice Department. On December 10th, 2020, you tweeted, "Abolish the death penalty." Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. July 4th, 2020, you tweeted, "The death penalty is always wrong, but right now a priority apparently for U.S. DOJ." Is that correct?
Senator, I have been a proponent against the death penalty, but I also know how to enforce the law, and I did so when I was in the Justice Department before, when Dylan Roof committed the heinous act against 9 parishioners at the Charleston AME Church, and that prosecution and conviction happened under my watch.
Is the death penalty wrong for the Boston bomber or the Charlottesville shooter?
Senator, if I'm confirmed as Associate Attorney General, I will be following the law, and at the Justice Department, there are actually quite strict procedures for certification in a death penalty case. That decision to pursue a death sentence resides with the Attorney General of the United States, who considers the aggravators and mitigators pursuant to the law. That will be the decision and determination of the next Attorney General of the United States.
Ms. Gupta, is it fair to say that you have double standards then based on your personal opinion or what you see as a professional responsibility?
I don't believe I do. I believe that if I'm confirmed, my personal opinions on things take second place to the Constitution and federal law.
Yield back.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. I'd like to submit for the record letters of endorsement of Vanita Gupta from the Fraternal Order of Police, National Sheriffs Association, the President of the National Sheriffs Association, David Mahoney, who's Sheriff of Dane County, Wisconsin, the Major County Sheriffs of America, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Major Cities Chiefs Association, 53 current or former police chiefs or sheriffs, the Police Executive Research Forum, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, the Hispanic American Police Commanders Association, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives,